stoppered with a corn cob and a number of small cups. "It's a little early in the day," he went on, "but this is a very special occasion. You smoke a pipe, I take it?" he asked Altamont. "Then try some of this, of our own growth and curing." He extended a doeskin moccasin, which seemed to be the tobacco container. Altamont looked at the thing dubiously, then filled his pipe from it. The oldster drew his pistol, pushed a little wooden plug into the vent, added some tow to the priming, and, aiming at the wall, snapped it. Evidently, at time the formality of plugging the vent had been overlooked. There were a number of holes in the wall there. This time, however, the pistol didn't go off. The old man shook out the smouldering tow, blew it into flame, and lit a candle from it, offering the light to Altamont. Loudons got out a cigar and lit it from the candle. The others filled and lighted pipes. The Toon Leader reprimed his pistol, then holstered it, took off his belt and laid it aside, an example the others followed. They drank ceremoniously, and then seated themselves at the table. As they did, 2 more men entered the room. They were introduced as Alexander Barrett, the gunsmith, and Stanley Markovich, the distiller. The Toon Leader began by asking, "You come, then, from the west?" "Are you from Utah?" the gunsmith interrupted suspiciously. "Why, no, we're from Arizona, a place called Fort Ridgeway," Loudons said. The others nodded, in the manner of people who wish to conceal ignorance. It was obvious that none of them had ever heard of Fort Ridgeway, or Arizona either. "You say you come from a fort? Then the wars aren't over yet?" Sarge Hughes asked. "The wars have been over for a long time. You know how terrible they were. You know how few in all the countries were left alive," Loudons said. "None that we know of beside ourselves and the Scourers, until you came," the Toon Leader said. "We have found only a few small groups in the whole country who have managed to save anything of the old times. Most of them lived in little villages and cultivated land. A few had horses or cows. None that we have ever found before made guns and powder for themselves. But they remembered that they were men and did not eat one another. Whenever we find a group of people like this, we try to persuade them to let us help them." "Why?" the Toon Leader asked. "Why do you do this for people that you have never met before? What do you want from them, from us, in return for your help?" He was speaking to Altamont rather than to Loudons. It seemed obvious that he believed Altamont to be the leader and Loudons the subordinate. "Because we are trying to bring back the best of the old times," Altamont told him. "Look, you have had troubles here. So have we, many times. Years when the crops didn't... He looked at Loudons, aware that his partner should be talking now, and also suddenly aware that Loudons had recognized the situation and left the leadership up to him. "Years that the crops failed. Years of storms, or floods. Troubles with those beast men in the woods." "And you were alone, as we were, with no one to help?" "We want to put all men who are still men in touch with one another, so that they can help each other in trouble, and work together. If this isn't done, everything that makes men different from beasts will soon be no more." "He's right. One of us alone is helpless," the Reader said. "It is only in the Toon that there is strength. He wants to organize a Toon of all Toons." "That's about it. We are beginning to make helicopters, like the one Loudons and I came in. We'll furnish your community with one or more of them. We can give you a radio so that you can communicate with other communities. We can give you rifles and machine guns and ammunition to fight the Scourers, did you call them? And we can give you atomic engines so that you can build machines for yourselves." "Some of our people. Alex Barrett here, the gunsmith.
and Stan Markovich, the distiller, and Harrison Grant, the iron worker, get their living by making things. How'd they make out after your machines came in here?" Verner Hughes asked.
"We've thought of that. We had that problem with other groups we've helped," Ludens said. "In some communities, everybody owns everything in common, so we don't have much of a problem. Is that the way you do it here?"
"Well, no. If a man makes a thing, or digs it out of the ruins, or catches it in the woods, it's his."
"Then we'll work out some way. Give the machines to the people who are already in a trade, or something like that. We'll have to talk it over with you, and with the people concerned."
"How is it you took so long finding us?" Alex Barrett asked. "It's been 200 or so years since the wars." "Alex, you see but you do not observe," the Toon leader rebuked. "These people have their flying machines, which are highly complicated mechanisms. They would have to make tools, and machines to make them, and tools and machines to make those tools and machines. They would have to find materials, often going in search of them. The marvel is not that they took so long, but that they did it so quickly."
"That's right," Altamont said. "Originally, Fort Ridgeway was a military research and development center. As the country became disorganized, the government set this project up to develop ways of improvising power and transportation and communication methods, and extracting raw materials. If they'd had a little more time, they might have saved the country. As it was, they were able to keep themselves alive and keep something like civilization going at the fort, while the whole country was breaking apart around them. Then, when the rockets stopped falling, they started to rebuild. Fortunately, more than half the technicians at the fort were women, so there was no question of them dying out. But it's only been in the last 20 years that we've been able to make nuclear electric engines, and this is the first time any of us have gotten east of the Mississippi." "How did your group manage to survive?" Ludens asked. "You call it the Toon. I suppose that's what the word platoon has become, with time. You were originally a military platoon?"
"Platoon!" the white-bearded man said. "Of all the unpardonable stupidities! Of course that's what it was. And the title tenant was originally lieutenant. I know that, though we have dropped all use of the first part of the word. But that should have led me, if I had used my wits, to deduce platoon from toon."
The tenant shook his head in dismay at the stupidity, and Ludens found himself forced to say, "One syllable like that could have come from many words." Chapter 4. The tenant smiled at Ludens and said,
"Your courtesy does not excuse our stupidity. We know our history, and we should have identified the word accurately. Yes, we were originally a platoon of soldiers, 200 years ago, at the time when the wars ended. The old Toon and the first tenant were guarding POWs. And there, sir," to Ludens, "is a word we cannot trace. We have no idea what they were. In any event, the POWs were all killed by a big bomb, and the first tenant, Lieutenant Gilbert Dunbar, took his platoon and started to march to DC, where the government was. But there was no government anymore. They fought with people along the way. When they needed food or ammunition or animals to pull their wagons, they took them and killed those who tried to prevent them. Other people joined the Toon, and when they found women they wanted, they took them. They did all sorts of things that would have been crimes if there had been any law. But since there was no law, it was obvious that they could do no crime. The first lieutenant kept his men together because he had the books. Each evening, at the end of each day's march, he read to his men out of them."
Altamont knew, without looking at his associate, that Ludens would be inconspicuously jotting down notes. The last was an item the sociologist would be sure to record.